Hey everyone, as we know, the psychedelic space has taken a pretty big hit in the stock market perspective over the last few months. However, the framework that's being done behind the scenes is growing at a rapid pace that very few could have predicted. So if you, the investor, could sit down with one of the leading CEOs of one of the leading companies in the space, what would your question be? And what would their response be? Well, we had that opportunity. Find out now in our latest podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Dales Report podcast. I'm happy to join back to the podcast the CEO of MSET Pharma, James Lanthier. James, good to see you. How are things?
Dad, great to see you too. Things are great. Thanks for having us back on.
Yeah, and looky, who we have in the middle here. Joe Araujo, Chief Scientific Officer. Looks like you got a bit of sunlight coming in. How are things, Joe, and where are you located right now?
I'm lucky to be in Florida, avoiding some of the cold weather. Good to see you again, Chad.
Yeah, good to see you guys. Last time we saw each other face-to-face was in Miami. Wish I could go back there. And it sounds like maybe you, Joe, never left. So that was kind of a smart move on your behalf. But I wanted to have you guys on. Obviously, a very strong news cycle lately for your company, including the news from earlier this week. So the latest being related to your COPE platform, indicating new pharmacological insights related to the mechanisms of action and bioavailability of 5-MeO, DMT, and other first-generation psychedelics. So, Joe, very scientific news for people that are still learning the space. So translate this in for me. So what does this mean, and why is this important?
Yeah, so I think what we're trying to do is develop new drugs that are, superior to known drugs. Yep. And so in order to do that, you need to build a model system, right? So, if you were going to build a house, you could build a small model. Yep. So when we're trying to build new drugs, we develop model systems to test those drugs and compare it to other drugs. So essentially what we're doing is we're collecting that important information on known drugs so that we can figure out whether our drugs are better, whether they're orally active. And this is essentially what we're doing with the COPE program. So we know today that, we've verified some things that, are well known, that 5-MeO DMT at normal doses, you can't take that orally, it doesn't work. Right. So now we can, look at our family 4 compounds and find an orally active one that compares, as an example. So really it's just building model systems to build a better drug.
So let's circle back then. Let's learn more about this COPE platform. And it's a question for both of you. Maybe, James, you want to take this being the CEO, or you can as well, Joe, being Chief Scientific Officer. But if I'm new to the space, I look at your company. I do know that there's a lot of people that love the scientific work that you guys are doing. Explain to me the COPE platform and why it's such a distinct advantage compared to, say, other companies within the actual space.
Well, sure. Why don't I give it a shot? So the COPE program is something that we formed with our partner InterVivo Solutions, and the idea behind COPE was really twofold. It's that, as Joe said, having benchmarking data, referencing data to be able to, if you're trying to make a new drug that's better than an old drug, you got to understand how the old drug works, how it works in the body, and how it affects the body. And because these compounds, psychedelic compounds, were for so many years out of bounds, and it didn't make sense legally, and it didn't make sense for pharma companies to work with them and to study them. There's actually there's not a huge amount of this kind of basic scientific data about them. MSET really needs it for its own purposes to design our drugs, but frankly, it's data that really the whole space needs if it's going to move forward and we're going to have regulated psychedelic medication. So we felt like there was an opportunity to really kind of programmatically create, hopefully, what could be really the industry's biggest data set on how these different psychedelic drugs work and interact with the body. We would be able to use it, but also, we'd be able to further commercialize that through a partnership with InterVivo to other clients of InterVivo's who could also use this data as well.
Is that something that's missing right now in the space, or at least needs to improve, Joe?
Yeah, I think this goes across, whenever you're developing a drug, right, you have different labs that might run the same assay, but, by nature, it's going to be a little different in every location. So the easiest way to really compare A to B, or drug A versus drug B, is to do it in the same place, same people, same setup. So that way you're really comparing apples to apples, rather than trying to compare data sets from different places. So that's what the COPE program is trying to establish, a place where other companies can go, really with the goal of finding the best drugs, the best new drugs possible, and that does not exist. So this is the first of its class that we're aware of in the psychedelic space.
Do you think this was a key component with this platform when you announced your partnership last month, James, with regards to the big pharma partnership with Otsuka?
Well, certainly, what I would say is it's an example of kind of the hard science approach of mindset, right? We're trying to do straightforward things, but difficult things. We're trying to make new drugs that do a better job than drugs that already do not a bad job. So drugs like psilocybin. And I think it's probably fair to say that one of the things that really attracted Otsuka to mindset in the space is just our really rigorous focus on doing the basic hard science work, and we, like we've said from the beginning, with our new drug programs, we really just tried to kind of follow the data and see where it took us. But to follow the data, you got to have data to figure out what you're benchmarking against, and this is a great example of I think the guiding ethos of mindset, and I think an example of the type of thing that would have definitely contributed to Otsuka's interest in the partnership.
Yeah. I have to fast forward, like if we're looking at this industry 3, 4, 5 years from now, as we know, there's lots of discussion that goes on right now amongst the community about the potential benefits of microdosing, which is an area you're attempting to obviously address. So when I look at how you have synthesized compounds, which ultimately is a long-term vision, meaning, are you positioning for your future, where a significant portion of the population microdoses psychoactive substances daily, like, say, psilocybin?
Yeah, I would say we're completely focused on the medicinal market. So in order for us to bring a new drug forward, we need to be treating some disease, some indication that's relevant. So, we're talking in that microdosing platform very, very specifically and purposefully about attentional improvement, motivational improvement, things that are measurable and things that are impaired in certain diseases. At this stage, talking about a large population microdosing, there's not enough data to support microdosing in healthy people. So, we're really focused on the medicinal.
But
so that's going to change.
I would just add to that, though, that for, I think, you don't need to be an expert to recognize that for people to take a drug, a psychedelic or psychoactive drug, in the way that people microdose today, that's a much easier therapeutic approach for people to get their heads around. Taking a sub-hallucinogenic dose of a drug, not undergoing a psychedelic experience, and taking it on a everyday or every other day basis. And we think that there are, if we can successfully get to a drug that ticks the boxes for what you would want to have in that kind of product profile, it will open up, much larger markets of patients who, for whom taking a drug that way is just a much easier way to get their head around than the idea of going into a therapist's office and undergoing a really big, profound psychedelic experience.
What would you guys say? And I know I've asked this question a lot, maybe 6 months to a year ago, but sometimes it's good to refresh this. What's the biggest takeaway that I guess really opens up a lot of people's eyes when it comes to the research and data that you're performing within this industry? Because everywhere you look, it's not like it's just working a little bit effectively. I don't want to use the word cure, but some of the results that you're getting from other trials, from other companies in the space, is overwhelmingly successive. So Joe, what's one thing that stands out to you when it comes to the research that you continue to learn as you go down this path?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing clinically and also trying to translate back into animal studies is this is really, a new paradigm. Mm-hmm. You can take, a single dose and have long-lasting changes. This isn't something that, the pharma medical world is used to seeing. It's a really significant change in potentially the way we treat people and the way drugs work. So that's what's really, one of the things that's really exciting about being involved in this space is ketamine. We've seen some data like that with ketamine. We're now seeing data like that with MDMA and psilocybin. It's really exciting, and it changes the whole mental health treatment paradigm.
What was your reaction when you saw Johns Hopkins earlier this week announce that psilocybin is effective for up to 12 months? 12 months, like that's a lot different than, say, taking prescription drugs every single day, right?
Yeah, once again, totally changes the paradigm, totally changes our understanding and the way we need to think about mental health diseases and disorders. It's phenomenal data.
James, excuse me, battling a little bit of cold here this week, but I wanted to ask, like right now, how much of a global pandemic are we in when it comes to mental health? And some of the conversations that you have, like when COVID starts to subside a little bit, where are we at? And like, what are some of the, conversations and stats that you're looking at once we try to get out of this? And, really, for the most part, having to deal with a lot of mental stress for people across the world.
Well, it's pretty hard. I can tell you one of the things that's been really heartbreaking with my with Mindset has been watching the emails roll into our general email inbox from people who are either suffering suffering terribly from a mood disorder, or who have a loved one who are suffering badly, and again and again, really the story, the theme of these letters that we get is the same. They've tried all kinds of different treatments, none of them have worked. Their quality of life is suffering, horribly. It's been exacerbated by COVID. I mean, we get these emails all the time, and there are people who've read about the work that we're doing, have probably, read some articles about the breakthrough potential of psychedelics, and, are asking how can they get our drugs, how can they get into a trial? And, we're preclinical. Our drugs are not ready for humans yet, but we try to point them in the direction of the different resources that are out there. It's just, it's really heartbreaking, and frankly, and great that you brought up the Johns Hopkins data. I mean, it's great to have that data out, reinforcing, I think, what
of course.
we all have seen so far. And I think, the space can't grow and mature fast enough, because people need access to better alternatives than what they have today, because what they have today just doesn't work for a lot of people.
I know. Look at, even last week, we had in our top 5 story, the state of Utah and their House of Representatives have passed a bill to look at the research and the benefits of psychedelics and psilocybin related to mental health. State of Utah, and I think a lot of people may have overlooked that, but that's telling when you look at a state like that and how important this is right now, don't you both think?
I mean, Utah historically has been a place it's been tough to even get a drink. The fact that these trials for MDMA and psilocybin moved forward and with such support from the FDA during a Republican administration. I mean, at the end of the day, mental health is it's the ultimate bipartisan issue because it affects everybody. Yeah,
Joe, you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think I think James is absolutely right, and when I'll a state or a province begins to recognize the importance of and the impact of mental health. It's coming to the forefront more and more, and it's important. If we want to treat it and we want better treatments, we have to recognize it and then hopefully understand it and be able to treat it.
Well, the last thing I wanted to bring up as well is, like, when I look at this industry right now and the way it's advanced, especially in the last 60 days, we look at the news last week with Cathie Wood getting involved, one of the largest hedge funds in the world, developing and I should say investing within this space. Your announcement with obviously Otsuka last month, the SNP amendment. When we look at this industry and how fast it is growing, James, what's the message that you're communicating from transparency to your investors? Because when we look at the market, I don't even want to talk about that right now, but the overall health of the industry, if this was a private industry right now, there'd be no better time, right?
No better time at all. And you can't control the market or the rate curve or, things like that. But, Shad, I think you did a great job of,
highlighting
all the positive developments. The space is headed in the right direction.
I know.
Mindset's headed in the right direction. Other companies, a number of other ones are headed in the right direction, as well. So, I'm even more bullish about the direction of the whole space, and I'm certainly about mindset than I would have been, 6, 12, 24 months ago. I think what I can say, as far as investor interest is, every day we talk to more and more capital groups, sophisticated investors who are really interested in the space because they see getting more interested in the space because they see, they see all this positive data accumulating, and there's more and more of a consensus, I think, that psychedelics are going to be, a really viable medical, alternative. So I don't have any concerns that, about the level of kind of capital interest in the space. It's all coming. But I think everybody has to remember, we got to be a little bit patient. This is a biotech sector. It takes some time for these drugs. Will take some time for these drugs to get into the hands of patients. But there's only going to be more catalysts along the way. So I think we just need people need to be a little bit patient. I think the future is very, very bright.
What would you say from a science perspective, Joe? You look at this industry, but most importantly, your company specifically. If there are people that are watching this for the first time, what is some of the information that you share in conjunction with James as to why, as I said before, mindset is viewed amongst many peers within the space as an industry leader?
Yeah, from a science perspective, we're still very early in our understanding of the psychedelic space. And really, I think it demonstrates that we're still early in our understanding of the mind, brain, and mental health issues. And so as we see the data unfolding clinically, we begin to understand, that there are other ways to look at mental health. We're beginning to learn about that, and then to be able to back translate that and show that we can develop better drugs, newer drugs. I mean, the sky's the limit here, right? The 30% of patients that aren't getting benefit from current treatments, it's an enormous number. We have to do better. High? It's that high. I mean, it's pretty consistent across several different disease indications. That's about treatment-resistant depression. That's treatment-resistant epilepsy. There's so many patients who don't get full benefit or enough benefit. If we want to move forward as a better, more healthy society, we have to address these issues. And so, this is just the beginning of a new way of thinking about how to help people and mental health well-being and mental health.
The COVID aftermath, right? Yeah. And I know it was a big, obviously, concern even prior to COVID, but this definitely fast-forward things. But, in some ways, for every bad thing that happens, it's like maybe we can look at opportunity and just really rip the Band-Aid off and look at where we are as a society right now. But, to time has changed to continue the conversations going. And, you know, obviously I applaud the research and the initiatives that you guys are doing day in and day out. So a big thank you, and appreciate you guys checking in with us here on the podcast today.
Thanks, Shad.
Thank you, Shad.
Thanks, Gene.
Really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Joe. Enjoy the weather, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks.